conservatives for many years that will tell you, actually, we need to vote Democrat. We need to burn this down, and we need to usher in an era of post-left and right politics. That's an old paradigm, bro. Well, that's not true. If you vote Democrat, they will let in 3 to 5 million third worlders a year illegally. And they will do it happily. They will smile to your face. They will lie to you about why they are doing it, that it's even happening at all. They will tell you the border is secure, and they will overrun this country. For that issue alone, you should never vote Democrat again. There are myriad issues of which you could put in that category, but for that issue alone, you do not want America to be invaded again by third worlders. If you have kids, grandkids, you do not want to vote Democrat. But if our pitch is only going to be that voting Democrat is the least worst choice, or is the most worst choice, and that voting Republican is the least worst choice, then that is not an inspiring message to about 50% of the country. Because you got 25% hardened on this side, 25% hardened on that side, and then you got about the mushy middle, the normies, as we sometimes call them. And that's not a pejorative, by the way. People should not be so fixated on politics. The politics of this country should run itself. It should be something you could sort of put in the background and depend upon that it will be handled professionally and in an adult manner.
True.
With common sense. What's in the best interest of the country? We are not in that era. And so, there are a lot of people fixated on politics, and they're just getting bad vibes. And I will repeat myself I'm blue in the face that I think it goes back to the way Epstein was handled for a lot of people. That felt like a psychic break, a betrayal of trust, of transparency. Whether or not the admin knew that, I don't think they understood that, but it was a break, okay? And you can get mad at me in the emails if you want, that we're playing into the hoax. I'm just telling you the politics of it, folks. Now, do I think Trump did anything wrong? No, of course, but I think that it could have been handled better. Then you get into Iran. A lot of people believe that President Trump said no new wars. It's not exactly what he said. He was very consistent on Iran. Nevertheless, the Iran conflict, you go back to Midnight Hammer, but then you get into the spring and the ongoing conflict with Iran. It's been a drag, okay? It's been a drag. And unfortunately, this has resulted in some very negative polling, and we have to be honest about it. We have to offer something better than we're just not as bad as the other guys. And I think Blake would agree. Blake, I'm going to play this clip, and then I'm going to have your reaction on the other side. And you can sort of analyze how we got here. Stop 15.
What is going on, Mr. Berman? What's going on is simple. Is the MAGA movement was built among the working class, non-college Americans. And take a look at this trend line that we're looking at in the data. Here we go. Okay, net favorability rating, the MAGA movement, non-college adults. Back in October of 2024, look at that. On the plus side of the ledger, positive, plus 6 points. Down we go into the Atlantic Ocean now. Look at this movement. Now minus 22 points. That is a shift, Johnny B, of 28 points away from the MAGA movement, away with non-college Americans. So the bottom line is the group at which the Trump movement was built upon, they are shifting away and saying, we don't like MAGA anymore.
Well,
That's
as he says, non-college Americans. You have to think about what that represents. That represents blue-collar working-class people, like the union voters who swung towards Trump. It represents a lot of rural voters. I think a lot about, if you've ever heard of it, it's called the driftless area. It's kind of the border area, Wisconsin, Minnesota, western Illinois, kind of all northern Mississippi River area. And those are counties that are rural, lightly populated, but historically voted pretty blue. They voted for Obama, for example. They helped make Iowa a blue state under Obama. And they swung really dramatically, aggressively towards Donald Trump. That is what we do. When we talk about Donald Trump remaking American politics, it's not just about issues, it's about coalitions. That Donald Trump massively boosted the GOP with lower education voters, with lower income voters, while at the same time, he was shedding some of the higher educated, higher income voters who had more globalist points of view, who didn't care for his style of politics. That was the Trump realignment, Andrew. And that's what enabled him to win states no Republican had won in decades. That is how he's able to win.
Yeah.
Wisconsin, win Michigan, win Pennsylvania, win back Nevada after it had gone blue for several elections. And as you say, we need to be paying attention if the polls say that that is swinging the other way. They are true swing voters. They're the kind of people you can win back, but we should not ignore this fact. I think there's a lot of people who will prefer to look at any poll that is bad and say that the poll is fake, to say that the poll has a bad sample or whatever. And I think you and I know, and Charlie would know, you have to pay attention to these sorts of things. Even if the poll is exaggerated, it's getting at something real. And I think what we've seen play out is a lot of people probably were innately a little bit wary of going for Donald Trump and going for the Republicans again in 2024. But Charlie and others made a good pitch on affordability, on the border, on Biden being a complete disaster, on no wars, and in some cases on Epstein. And they feel like they got burned on at least some of those issues. And it's going to be a lift to get them to trust us again. And it's not something that you can just win over with rhetoric. It's something where you need to have real wins to offer them. We can't just give them a lecture.
Well, and I do believe that we have real wins.
100%.
So I do believe that part of it is messaging, right? And this goes back to the issue of the burrito, the infamous burrito now. My whole point was not that that a $20 burrito is even the norm. I'm not even saying that. I'm saying in the minds of voters, they think it costs $20, all right? They think the average, if a college kid is paying $17 for a burrito, he basically is thinking that's a $20 burrito, right? And to ignore the feelings and the anxieties of your voters, I think, is political malfeasance. But the point is that we have to be offering a positive vision, and I think we've got away from that, and we need to be messaging on that, and we need to declare our wins loudly and proudly. The chief among them, obviously, is the border, but there's myriad other wins. There's multiple other areas of the country and of the economy that we could genuinely point to as being hugely successful, and we need to do that. We will go on with this because it's not just about the MAGA movement. It's about Trump. It's about congressional candidates. This is multiple layers of this. So, Blake, it's not just about the approval of working class voters when it comes to MAGA. This is hitting Trump himself now. SOT 16.
So how about what the same group is saying about Donald Trump specifically?
Yeah, okay. So you know what? The idea being, okay, maybe they've soured on MAGA, but they haven't soured on MAGA, but maybe they haven't soured on me, Donald Trump might be saying. Ain't the truth. Take a look here. Okay, non-college voters on Trump. Hello. Okay, in the 2024 election, he won them by 13 points, right? That was the reason he won. He won among non-college voters, a very strong performance amongst them, and that, of course, was the reason he was able to win, because college voters were against him. But look at this now. Minus 19 points. Minus 19 points. We're talking about an even bigger shift here. We're talking about, what is this? This is a 32-point shift away from the President of the United States when it comes to his key core political group.
I am not blackpilling. There is never a black pill.
Never allowed.
Okay? Never allowed. But if you don't look at that and you don't say to yourself, 5-alarm fire, then you're crazy. Okay? You've got your head stuck in the sand. We have to look at that and say the very group of people that we came to rely on, that it was like, I mean, those people were going to walk on broken glass and hot coals to go vote for Donald Trump. When you see a divergence like that, something incredibly wrong has happened. Something incredibly bad has happened, okay? And why it gets worse, and we have to be honest about this because it's August 10th, we got November coming up in just months now, is that it's going to impact congressional candidates, who we're going to have 2 of them on in the next segment, because it's that important. We got to get behind these people. And before I play this clip, let me just say, all of America and the West, Western civilization, hinges on the fact that conservatives stay in power. Now, I hate to say it to you that much. There's no pressure here, folks. But this is how bad it is. And we've got to change something. We've got to change our messaging. SOT 17.
Choice for the House, non-college voters. 2024 election, look at this. Republicans plus 13 points. Now Democrats actually lead among non-college voters in an average of polls. It's just a point, but you know what? When it comes to a point, and given how well the Democrats are doing among college voters, these are the types of numbers in which blue waves are built.
That's not all the vote, by the way. This is, again, just working class voters. Trump's bedrock constituency. The most foundational element of that constituency. I mean, if you have a college degree, you're like so far blue, it's beyond crazy. That's why that's why college is a scam. Yet another reason a lot of people educated beyond their intelligence. This is non-college educated working class voters here, Blake. So the question is, what do we do about it? Now, I'll throw it to you, Blake. What would you like to see from a messaging standpoint and from a policy standpoint in the next couple of months that can turn, hopefully, some of this around?
Well, I think we've discussed this a lot. I think it's pretty likely at this point, the biggest thing he could do to turn around the tide is probably he has to find a way to credibly end the conflict in Iran. I think you and I both saw that was a big point where things started to go south with a lot of people. And it's not so much whether the war is going well or not, and it's not even whether Donald Trump himself campaigned on no new wars. I know a lot of people who touted President Trump said that, but Trump himself was more measured in what he said. Nevertheless, I think it's very clear a lot of people had the perception that was a reason to vote for Trump, that he had the credibility of being the guy who didn't want more new wars. And when the Iran war broke out, a lot of people felt super burned about that. And we're only a few months out from the election at this point. We can maybe talk about economic messaging in a better way, but that stuff is sticky. It moves slowly. And I think the only thing where you can get like a big flash headline that would be positive in winning these people over is getting the Iran war credibly towards a permanent resolution and saying, I took care of this. It's not a thing you're going to have to worry about for the next 2 years. Beyond that,
Well, here's the
messaging,
deal.
I think we've talked, if Congress could come out and say, hey, we just passed a bill to block more stock trading and insider dealing by members of Congress, we just passed some sort of anti-corruption
Save
measure,
America
stuff like
Act.
that could be a good headline. And the SAVE Act. SAVE Act is not necessarily going to be every swing voter, but the people who are disapproving because they're base voters who feel let down, they would be won over by that.
Yeah, you've got to address base concerns because we have a base fatigue issue, right? The base enthusiasm issue. We've got to give them a reason to be enthusiastic again. By the way, breaking news this morning, which I think is totally red meat, and people laugh at the expression red meat. I love red meat. Give us more. We need to feast on red meat right now. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the Trump administration has revoked 175,000 visas since President Trump took office, including visas held by foreign nationals accused of crimes such as fraud and sexual abuse, as well as people who celebrated the death of Charlie Kirk. So we have foreigners coming in here celebrating Charlie's assassination. Rubio emphasized that a visa is permission to enter the United States, not a constitutional right, nor a right to stay here. Boom, get them the heck out. By the way, H-1Bs are all but gone. Just so you're aware, the Trump administration has basically ended H-1Bs. Now, if you let a Democrat back in office, guess what's going to happen to those H-1Bs? They're going to shoot right back up again.
Yeah, Andrew,
So
I think
the wins are there. Go ahead.
I just think it's so worth emphasizing that people will say, oh, I'm going to go for a Democrat because they're better on affordability or whatever. And the number one thing you have to emphasize is it doesn't really matter what Democrats are for domestically because they are still all in on abolish the West, commit national suicide. They're worse on that than ever. They're worse on that in every country. They're not
Yes.
moderating one
Amen.
inch. It basically doesn't matter what their
Amen.
other views are.
Guest in store for you, and that is, of course, Christopher Rufo. We tried to do this last week, but I believe we're in good shape today. Chris does so much stuff, including work with the City Journal and Manhattan Institute, Hillsdale College. He's got Rufo and Lomez, which is a great show you guys should be checking out. We love both those guys, and I think they're really important right now, especially in this era. So without further ado, Chris, welcome back. Christopher Rufo, the man, the myth, the legend. He is there. All right, Chris, so the original inspiration for having you on was you had this great, just very common sense reaction to Burrito Gate, which was, I just felt it was very, how do I say it? It was refreshing because you said this, 151, you said, crazy to see free market conservatives tell anxious young people to shut up and accept double-digit inflation instead of taking the opportunity to explain that inflation is a direct result of bad government policy. It's perfectly fine to notice that burritos shouldn't be $20. Instead, Chris, we got this whole debate of like, oh, they're not $20 actually, and oh, you should be cooking from home, and bologna and Kraft singles and all kinds of stuff happened in this, which I just felt like, God, it's so confused. Please, please, please ground us again in what good policy should be, and where does inflation actually come from, and why that's so important for the next generation to understand.
Yeah, no, great question. It's good to be with you. And sorry for last week. I had 3 kids with vomiting, and then I caught it, and I was in no shape on Friday. But we're back in action today. So
That's all
look,
right. I've been there.
Here's the burrito thing. All right, the burrito debate was not actually about burritos. The burritos became a symbol or a signifier, and then everybody took their pet ideological issues and tried to jam it into this huge debate burrito. And it got so weird that people were like, no, even if the burritos are $20, we have to keep bombing Iran. Like, what are we doing? So yeah, the basic thing is, look, neoconservatives who are interventionist on foreign policy and free market and economics, I half agree with them. I'm also free market on economics. I think supply side economics works. I think monetary critiques of inflation are largely accurate. The price of goods went up a lot during COVID because the Trump administration and then the Biden administration flooded the United States with dollars. And just as the amount of goods was contracting, right? So supply chains are tightening, the amount of goods in circulation is contracting slightly, the flood of dollars goes out. This is like economics 101 in high school. That's going to lead to inflation. And then the reason the inflation, it happened mostly in the Biden administration, it slowed down during Trump. But people are starting to feel the inflation in 2 ways. One, in their big picture family budgets. Housing is very expensive. College education is very expensive. Health insurance is very expensive. Car insurance is very expensive. It squeezes your budget. So that when you go to a Chipotle or a kind of upscale, fast casual burrito place, and your burrito is $20, that feels more significant. And look, it is more significant. And Republicans who are just going to say, shut up, accept that these kind of small luxuries, right? Small indulgences. Yeah, they're up 50% in 5 years, but just shut up because your grandpa ate rat meat during the Great Depression. Okay, from a large point of view, yeah, you should learn from your ancestors who went through hard times. You should use it as inspiration. But as a political matter, what are we doing? That's just political suicide, to tell people to accept 50% inflation on small indulgences. And I just don't take it very seriously from people who claim to be free market, fiscal conservatives, monetary conservatives, to just justify inflation because they fear that the critique is really about the war. And that's what was happening. And I think people should just should not fall for the facial debate, but should actually go for, why are people seemingly arguing something that they actually don't support in principle.
I thought about whatever you make of what causes inflation. It felt like weird territory to be fighting on because, as you mentioned, the biggest drivers of why life feels unaffordable, as you mentioned, housing, healthcare, education. As you know, those are things that are very expensive in large part because they are where the government is most involved. They meddle the most. These are all heavily socialized. Even the $20 burrito, I think when we dived into it, the context was often, this is what my college's meal program charges me for, and that's often a cartel where you're forced to sign up, and all of this is enabled with endless government student loans. And so what do you think rhetorically is the best approach to it? Because it struck me that the best pivot off of this should be, we need to go after the real drivers of why your life is unaffordable, which is inextricably bound up with stuff that the left wants to just pump more free money into to keep the price rising.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so you need to take the opportunity, just say, break it down. Why is a burrito $20? Burrito's $20 because of bad monetary policy, because of, you could even talk about, higher wages. You could talk about immigration. There's immigration for housing prices. I mean, there's a lot of ways to explain why the cost of goods has risen. There's a couple key things. Monetary policy, the government takeover of sectors of the economy, and mass immigration driving up the prices of things like entry-level housing, let's say. So just make that argument. And it's not about Trump. It's not about the war. Make the actual substantive economic argument, because the other point that I was trying to make is right now people are feeling, and you could show them a million charts to try to explain to them why they shouldn't feel this way. But the reality is that people are feeling pinched economically. Even people who are professional class income, let's say six-figure income, have one or two kids, living in a city or a close ring suburb, they're feeling pinched. And if they're hearing from one side, we're going to give you free health care, free child care, free college education for your kids, and the other side is shut up and eat the rat meat, you're going to get your clock cleaned every time. And so let's not be stupid. Let's not pander. Let's not offer our own version of free stuff. But actually, let's make a good argument that will solve people's problem, that takes seriously their emotions. And again, conservatives need to ditch this 2016 ridiculous idea that facts don't care about your feelings. The opposite is almost certainly more true in politics. Your feelings, if you have them, are impervious to the facts, to charts, to logic. And so actually meet people where they are. Say, you know what, you're feeling pinched about inflation. You're going to hear this argument that you're going to get everything for free from the DSA. But actually, the DSA is the reason why those things are expensive in the first place. Come over here, let me explain to you why. That these people are making it more expensive. They're taking away what you could have. They're flooding the country with dollar bills and mass migration and exploding costs. We have a smarter way that's actually going to solve your problem. Just like make that argument, and I think it could be more successful.
I think people were shocked that I would, come in and admit that things are more expensive and that we have affordability crisis. But I even pointed to the fact that this was because this is a hangover from Biden-era inflation and COVID. Like, let's be honest about those. The Titanic cannot turn on a dime. It's going to take a while for policies to take effect and affordability issues to ease. And I think everybody just freaking out about that, making a proxy about Iran or something was just predictable. But, all the nuance was lost.